Well, good morning, everyone. Hope you've enjoyed that little break then and that you've had a chance to chat about the name of your very first pet. So, Van, go on, what was your pet? A budgie. A budgie called Roger. Fabulous. Roger Glynos the budgie. Have we got any other pets that you'd like to disclose the names of and what they were? Jordan, are you chuckling there? Have you got a pet? I just caught your eye. Tilly the Chihuahua, oh lovely. So we've got Roger and Tilly. Go on, what was yours? A cat called what? Elsa Moores. Oh, yeah, lovely, lovely. Go on, what was yours? A dog, Sonny, called Bella. Well, my children, I have two children, and they're now 39 and 40. And years ago, they were on this mission to get a pet. We weren't really pet animals at all. We just didn't have them. But my children really liked this idea of having a pet. So we gave in to a hamster. It's always a hamster, isn't it? You know, if you just don't want to go there. And before our service today, we always meet together as a team. So if you're part of the worship band or the tech team, and we asked the team this very question: what was your first pet? And the best name was a dog called King Nebuchadnezzar. Woo! So I love the names you've given this morning, but I'm sorry, but that is just ranking up there. So what you have to remember, I don't know if you know this or not, but if you get a pet and you end up taking it to the vets, it like adopts your surname. So Roger the Budgie would become Roger Glynos, okay, because he takes on Van's name. And the times I've sat in the vets with a hamster, and our first hamster was called Taz. So suddenly they're shouting, Taz Daniels! And I'm like, oh man, why did we go for that? Because it adopts your name. But interestingly, Joy shared something. Joy, I can't remember what your pet was called. Oh, Billy, and it was Billy the dog. But what Joy shared was that it was actually so traumatic when they lost Billy the dog that they never wanted to have another pet again. And often, that first pet, it's how we travel through grief with our children and for ourselves as well, because we get attached to this little person, this little thing that's part of our life. And if any of you ever travel along Chester Road in Warrington towards Walton Gardens, you can say a quick prayer as you pass the middle block of terraces, because Taz Daniels is in a margarine tub in the front garden. So he got an official burial. So those of you who want a rest in peace for Taz Daniels, there he is. Once we'd been out somewhere and we came back in, and my son went to see the hamster because it was new, and he came back to me. He must have been about 7 or 8, and he just said, he smiled at me. Now, what does a hamster look like when it's smiling? It's just like this unusual picture, just like really, I thought it was very amusing. Anyway, hold that thought about grief and what it's like when you walk through that with an animal that you've loved and lost. So, we are in Sammy September, because this month, these 4 Sundays, we're going to look at the life of Samuel. This isn't Samuel who was playing the drums for us earlier, much as that would be a very interesting life, and maybe that's for the future. But what we're going to look at is Samuel, who was the leader and judge of Israel. He was born 1,000 years before Christ, so we're going back 3,000 years. And we have got a little timeline which we can follow. So to start off with, Samuel the baby. There he is. And Samuel was born to Elkanah and Hannah, and they lived in a place called Ramah. From Ramah to a place called Shiloh was about a 6-hour walk, and Samuel and Hannah would do that walk to worship God annually at the temple in Shiloh. And one day, Hannah was there, and she was desperately wanting a child, and she prayed to God, and she made this promise in that temple, and she said, if you give me a baby, I will dedicate him to you. I'll give him back to you all the days of his life. Time passes on, and Samuel is born. And when he gets to about 3 or 4 years old, Hannah fulfills that promise, and she takes Samuel along to the temple, that time when they go to worship and pray to God, and she leaves him there with the priest called Eli. She fulfills her promise. She dedicates his life to God. And time moves on. And now, about this time, Samuel is about 12 years old. And each night, after he'd kind of done the work he was doing in the temple, he would lay down to sleep. And suddenly this night, he hears this voice, Samuel, Samuel. He hears someone like calling him. And he thinks it's Eli, the priest, who he's there working with. And so he keeps going back to Eli, and there's all this back and forth going on. And then eventually, Eli realizes that it is actually God who is calling Samuel. Heaven is shouting Samuel's name. I just wanted to kind of pause there a minute, because at that time, Eli had 2 sons, and one version of the Bible describes them as scoundrels, right? They were not good boys. And Samuel grew up in this environment which was not healthy. It was toxic. But you know what? It tells us that he grew pure and strong in God. And I just wanted to say, maybe today, you're 12, you're 13, and home life, school life is not good, but you can still excel in that situation because God is for you, God is on your side, and God is with you, and he is championing you despite that environment that is around you. Like he did with Samuel, and he's calling him. He is calling him, he's calling you, and he's got your name, and he's got a mission, and he's got a plan, and it will be fulfilled. Okay, got that out of my system now, that's good. Samuel grew to be a man, and I think we've got him here. We have that Samuel with his wife and his 2 sons. And sadly, Samuel's sons didn't grow following God like Samuel did. And that kind of caused problems for the leadership of the country. Samuel was the leader, but people didn't want his sons to take on that leadership. There was something interesting that came up at this point, because it tells us initially Samuel lived at Shiloh at the temple, but at this stage in his life, he's moved his family, and they're back in a place called Ramah. And Ramah was where Hannah and Elkanah lived. Part of me wondered, did Hannah get her boy back? She devoted him, she gave him to God, she left him at the temple, but did she get him back? In those later years, were they alive at the same time? I'm filling in blanks here, I've no idea. Hannah could have passed away, I don't know. But did she ever walk the streets of Ramah and see him? Did she get him back? That was kind of quite a poignant thing, because I just feel for us who are parents or we're carers, are we willing to dedicate our children to God? Are we willing to let them go? Are we willing to say, God, wherever you take them, that's good. Wherever they go, I will dedicate them to you, and they will follow you all the days of their life. We've got many parents whose children have gone into school for the first time. They've gone up to a different school, or even they're going off to uni. Are we letting them go with God's blessing, or are we like holding them really tight? Do we know that God will look after them, and he will be with them, and he will be there for them, like we would love to do? I kind of wrote this sentence, which was, can we trust God to take care of what we dedicate to him? And then I paused, and I changed 2 words round. And instead of saying, can we, I said, We can. We can. We can trust that God will take care of what we dedicate to him. So we'll move on from that, and we'll move on to a time where Samuel, although he was the leader, the people then decided, we don't want you leading us anymore. And these people, they just looked around, and they looked at what other nations had got, and they said, they've got a king. We want a king. Like, they've got someone who is ruling them. We want that king over us. We want the same, kind of leadership. And Samuel was like a bit gutted, really, because he'd led the people faithfully. And he had this honest and open conversation with God. And God said to him, they're not rejecting you, they're rejecting me, they're rejecting God. So the next thing to do is when we see Samuel meet this guy who's going to be the new king. And God does this amazing thing. God says to Samuel, right, this time tomorrow, you're going to meet him. This time tomorrow. And I'm always fascinated by that. Imagine if God said to us today, right, this time tomorrow. So you're like, 12 on Monday. Someone's going to come into my life and they're going to be significant. What's it going to be? And I always think, what was it like for Samuel that day as he woke up, as he had his breakfast? Maybe he had Weetabix, I don't know. But he's looking and he's thinking, what next? Who's coming? And then he sees Saul, head and shoulders above any other man. And God says to him, that's the guy. And there's this big banquet, everything, loads of celebrations going on. And then after the banquet, something quite remarkable happens, because all the people go and there's just Samuel and Saul, the new king, who's going to be new king, and there's his servant. And Saul says, send the servant away. So it's just now Samuel and Saul. And in that private moment, Samuel takes a flask, which is full of anointing oil, and he pours it over Saul's head to symbolize, you will be the next king. And then he kisses him. And that seals the fact that he is going to be king. And I think about Saul going back to his servant, and this servant kind of looks at Saul, and Saul's there dripping in oil. And I thought, do you not say anything? Did you not how come, why? Imagine you'd come here to church today, sat down next to someone, and they'd nipped out for a minute and come back. Next minute, they're dripping in oil. Would you not go hang on, what's the story here? But it's almost as if that's not discussed. And after this private ceremony where Saul is anointed as king, life moves on. And there is then this great celebration. And in that celebration, he is pronounced the king of Israel. And everyone is celebrating with that. They're so glad they've got a king. Finally, in this timeline, we have a time right at the end when Samuel is old and grey. I love that phrase. He's old and grey, but God has still got work for him to do. And it's here, at this point, that I want to step into the story. The people who'll be preaching over the next 3 weeks, they're going to take different parts of Samuel's life. And I just wanted to give you an overview so that you knew where you were going. But today we're going to look at this part right at the end of Samuel's life when he's old and grey. Just to say that the relationship between Samuel and Saul was a long one. It covered a lot of time, and it wasn't always a smooth relationship. But they had lots of shared experiences together. There's a time when they first met, and it talks about them sitting on a rooftop and talking all night. There's times when there was the personal moments, when he was anointed as king with the oil and when he got the kiss. There was the times of conflict, because Samuel had to call out things in Saul's life that were wrong. He had to look at his face and he just had to say, this isn't right. You need to change. There were times when they worshipped together, times of unity when they were at the temple and they just praised God together. But this friendship and relationship, it was coming to an end. And I feel here in the room today, I feel like we have two groups of people. We have a group one lot of people, and we have a group two lot of people. And as we just move on gently, I believe you'll find out which group you are in. And I'm not here to discriminate or to say you're group one, you're group two. But I think that as God speaks to you, as you listen to the Spirit, you will know, that's me. That's me. This subject we're going to look at, it's sensitive, and you will know, that's me, I am group one, and that is okay. Or you will know, you know what, I'm group two, and group two, that is okay as well. The verses, and there's only 2 verses I'm going to share today. One verse, it finishes a chapter in the life of Samuel. And the next verse is the very first verse of the 2nd chapter of his life. Okay, so when I saw them, like probably 20 years ago when I first read these verses, and they really struck home because it's about grief. And I realised from reading these verses that grief isn't just over someone who has passed away. That's what I always thought it was. You grieved over someone who is no longer with you. But what I've come to learn from this is that grief isn't just that, but it's people that we'll never see again. They're still very much alive, but we'll just never see them. And it's grief for other things as well. It's grief for dreams that have died. It's grief for things that we hoped would be, and they're not. They're dead in the water now, and we're grieving. It's grief for jobs that we didn't get, or it's grief that jobs we lost. It's grief for a promotion that went to somebody else. It's grief in ministry when we feel we've been overlooked. Yeah, we feel that perhaps that should have been our time, but it wasn't. It wasn't. But we're grieving. It's grief for homes that we've had to leave. It's grief for relationships that have ended. And it's grief for plans that have failed. As well as grieving for people, we grieve all those things as deeply and as painfully as we grieve the loss of a person that we loved. So, let's just read this verse. It's the last verse of 1 Samuel 15. And it talks about Samuel, and it says, until the day that Samuel died, he did not go to see Saul again. He never saw his face again. This friendship, but they never saw each other again. And though Samuel mourned, he grieved long and deeply for him. He never saw him again. He'd not passed on. He was very much alive and on the earth, but that was it. That friendship, that time was over. And there was great mourning in Samuel's heart. That I said that verse finishes a chapter, and the next verse opens it, but I don't know those time scales there. And there are no time scales in grief. As you move, it's as individual as you are as you move through grief. And God is there with you. So if you are today here in the room or watching online, if you are a group one griever and your grief, it's raw, it's painful, it's hurting, you're numb, you're aching, there isn't a need to hurry or rush through that. There isn't a need to pretend that everything's okay. There's just a need to be honest before God and say, this is awful and this hurts. I wanted to share some Bible verses. So we've got Psalm 34 and verse 18. And this is what God promises to the group one grievers. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted. He rescues those whose spirits are crushed. And group one grievers, you'll know, that's me. That is me. But God is near. And he's there, ready to rescue you and lift you up. Um, there are times when maybe if you're a group 1 griever that your life, suddenly, as you knew it, suddenly stopped. The world keeps spinning, but you don't. And you sit in the wreckage, stunned. Group 1 grievers, the Lord is close to the brokenhearted. Our next slide tells us, it's a quote from a lady I meant to put a name on called Heather, and she says that you are tenderly loved by a God who never rushes your healing or minimises your pain. The God of heaven totally understands, totally is on your side, totally gets the timescales that you need to work in. And he tenderly loves as he walks you through it. Then this next slide, it really sort of touched my heart, this one. Grief is the aching proof that you love deeply, and you still do. Yeah, it is. So don't worry if you're grieving and it hurts, because it's meant to. Yeah, it's proof that you love and that you still love, and you've not forgotten, and you're hanging in there. Okay, let's move on. So what does God say? God is the God who heals the brokenhearted and who bandages their wounds. Yeah? This is the God who draws aside, along with us, and he walks us through it. As I prepared this message, there was one word which really kind of stuck out to me. And I just felt that we need this word. We need to see this word on its own. And this word is permission. Because I kind of felt that this may be someone, and you need to give yourself permission to grieve. You need, not that anyone else needs to give it you, but you need to give yourself that permission to grieve. And God is saying, like, that's okay. Don't be brave. Don't try and put on a brave face. Don't try and, pretend nothing's happened. Block it out. Forget. Go with it. Go with your grief. Before we move on to our group 2 people, I kind of feel to say, if you are a group 1 person in here today and you know that, you'll know the numbness and that the grief is raw in your life, I'd almost want to say, stop listening now. Stop listening to what's coming out of here, but listen to what heaven is unopening in your heart. Listen to your thoughts and allow yourself to go with them. Allow yourself to walk with that process that God is taking you on. Go on that journey of grief. Because what's coming next, it almost seems a bit like hard from God. You know, this tender, loving God. What he said to Samuel next is quite like strong. So we're going to look at it. This is the first verse of the next chapter. And God says to Samuel, how long will you mourn over Saul? How long? God has observed Samuel's mourning, and he knows that it's just going on too long. He's allowed him grief time. He's allowed him time to mourn. But he says, you know I've rejected him as king over Israel. Fill your flask with anointing oil and get going. I'm sending you to Jesse, son of Bethlehem. I've spotted the very king I want from among his sons. So basically, Saul is going to be king no longer, and a new king is coming in to take his place called David. But in order for that to happen, Samuel has got to get into action. Samuel, who's been grieving, has got to move on. There's a lovely verse in Psalm 23, and it says, when I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. And the key thing in there is that we're walking through. We're not stood still. We're walking through. We're making progress. We're in it. We're in this dark valley, this shadow. It's painful, but we're walking on. I feel like some of us, We've put up a static caravan in the valley of the shadow of death, and we've put some decking around it, and we've got a pony tied up there. We are camping out in the valley of the shadow of death when we were never meant to. We were never meant to. We were meant to feel it and process it and go through it, but we were meant to move on. And God knows the Samuels in the room. God knows those of us, and we're too stagnant in the valley of the shadow of death, when really he's got mission, he's got the next step, he's got something else for us to do. Even though we're old and grey, that doesn't matter. He's got that next step for us. And this is what he says, and it's put sort of slightly differently in other versions. I think that's going to come up on the screen now. It's like, how long will you grieve? Go on grieving. Continue to grieve. Mope. I thought mope was quite a strong word, isn't it? You have mourned long enough. And I kind of wanted to stop at this point and just ask, remembering grief isn't just always about a person that's passed on. Grief is those lost opportunities, the things that have crushed us in our spirit, the jobs we didn't get, the opportunities that went to somebody else. Grief is a whole range of stuff. Are we moping? Are we moping? Are we camping out in the valley when really God's got the next step for us? The last verse that I'm preaching on today is the start of this new chapter. And it's when God says these three things to Samuel. He says to him, fill your flask with anointing oil, get going, I am sending you. When Samuel first went to anoint Saul, his flask was full of oil. He was ready. He was prepared. But it's almost that going through this, Samuel had forgotten all of that. And he wasn't ministering. He wasn't using his gifting. He wasn't ready to go when God said. And God had to say to him, fill the flask with oil. And I'm just wondering, are you stuck somewhere feeling that anointing, that gifting, that calling on your life has gone? When God has actually placed it on your life and there is a new mission, there is a tomorrow. God of my future, God of my past, God of my present, God of my future, you hold it all together. We've sung that, haven't we, this morning? And Sam prayed that over us when we were in the team meeting today, that the God of the future holds it all together. He's got tomorrow. He's got it. So, fill the flask with oil. God said, get going. Sometimes grief makes us stagnant and we get stuck. And whether we are 12-year-old Samuel or Samuel at the end of his life, there is still mission, there is still purpose, there is still hope, there is still a new thing that only you can do, only you. There was only one Samuel, there's only one you. And God's taking you into tomorrow with this mission. And I loved it when Steve prayed earlier, because he prayed the names of God, and one of them was I am, the great I am. One of God's names is the great I am. And God says to Samuel, I am sending you. So we can go into tomorrow confident, one, that God's got a mission for us. Two, that he's saying, get going. And three, that we've got the backing of the great I am. As we finish now, I wanted to offer like a time for us to respond if we wanted to. This is an incredibly personal moment. No one is going to bother you or come up to you or say anything. But we have candles at either side of the stage. And I think today there's like two responses. If you're a group one person and you are in the middle of pain and grief, you just might want to take a candle and light it from one of the main candles and just look at that little flickering flame and know that the God of heaven is tenderly loving you and caring for you and alongside you in this pain. Or maybe you are a group 2 person, and you look at your life and you think, I've been stuck here too long, and sort of you put your hands up before God, and grief has defined you. You go forward into the future. You don't forget. You don't forget the person or the pain, but you come with it into the future. You take it with you because that has shaped where you are. And maybe you want to light a candle today and just say, God, God of my present, God of my future, you hold it all together. There's a, would you stand with me now? And then anyone who would like to get a candle, please just do. Please go and get a candle and light it and have that moment between you and heaven. As you remember, as you just sort of say to God, I'm giving you the future. I'm bringing all my pain. I'm bringing everything that's failed or gone wrong. And God, I just lift it up to you now.